Yo, yo, yo.
Hey, Matt, can you hear me okay?
Yep. How about you?
Yeah, I'm just trying to default a camera here. There we go.
I was trying to send that link out that Jory sent me, and it's not going.
I can hear you. I just can't see you, but let's.
Well, I can
There,
see.
I got you. I got you, my friend.
Whoop-de-doo.
Let me
This may
just
be
do
the
one
first,
thing
maybe
here.
the
Go
first
put
in
on my
3 weeks.
headset.
This
How
may
are
be the
you?
first in 3 weeks where we don't have technical difficulty.
This sounds, man. It sounds freaking awesome. It sounds really good.
It's just the difference between Google and Safari. That's all it was.
There we go. You're in my headset. Let me just get a sip of my tea here. So what's going on in the last week since I talked to you?
The lumber market is thoroughly confused. I think there's just absolutely so much data coming in that's negative. You got two narratives going on. One is the media just keeps talking about how negative housing is, and it's fallen off. Cancellations are 25%, and the prices are getting ready to fall 10%. And it's just gloom and doom. And then you talk to lumber dealers, and they say that they've been trying to get their inventories down for all through July and August. They keep running out of lumber.
Yeah.
So the builders are still pushing really hard to make sure they just want to get these cancellations done so they get the paperwork done and not get another cancellation. So it feels to me like there's the dynamic going on. There's this huge push just to get as much framed as possible, get as 1,600,000 starts in the ground, and because behind that there's nothing. There's just a lot of uncertainty and a lot of potential nothing.
So what I was thinking about, talking to you, actually, when I said talk to you last, I was talking to you when I was coming back from the train today. I wanted to talk about your comment about housing is too strong and lumber is confused, and I have some ideas on that also. For all your users, Matt's users that are here, I think that many of them have read what you've said, and I'm guessing there's the one thing I love, Matt, is you pick a topic and you frickin' head into it head on, right? And that pisses some people off sometimes, which I love, right? Which is great. And so let's handle that first. Let's talk a little bit about the lumber futures, new contracts starting off, lumber futures, cash, curtailments, all that happy stuff that we always talk about. Can you hear me okay, or is it crackling? Jory says
it is crackling. It is crackling.
Any better?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. Then let me get you over to a different audio. Is that better or worse?
That's better.
Okay. Let's just leave it on that one. That'll be on the screen. So let's go into talking about what you put in your Thursday, August 11th comment about housing is too strong and lumber is confused. Because the way that I look at it in talking to people, like Greg Riley and some other people, lumber rolled over 2 months ago. I mean, housing rolled over 2 months ago, right? And I don't think any of us can argue that there was a lot of hope 2 or 3 months ago that maybe it's different this time. And as you and I know, when mortgages go up and affordability goes up, and you raise 40% in some suburban locations, 10% in urban areas, there are some things that are unsustainable. Are there still people buying houses? Yeah, but they're definitely not the pace they were. So I'll let you talk about a few points you were talking about. Housing is too strong.
Well, it's funny that you can go back to almost every other week we talk about this. I keep going back to the 1.6 million starts and the 1.3 million completions. And we no matter what's happened, I mean, I thought we'd see an uptick in completions the last set of numbers, and it's actually down. And they blame it on weather or labor or warm heat, hot air, whatever it's going to be. But the fact is, there's just not enough material. There's not enough labor. There's not enough land. There's not enough the whole package to complete more than 1.3 million homes in this year. So the thing that's made the lumber market particularly funky is we're starting 1.6 million homes. That means we're starting 300,000 more than we're going to complete. And at some point that's got to catch up. And I think the builders are telling us clearly right now that they're rushing to get their starts in so they can get the contract signed. But beyond that, I mean, the builders are trying to convince themselves that they're solid through the end of the year. But there's nothing in this market that's solid. About consumer confidence is weaker than it's ever been before. And people, I think we could easily see people just walk away from this housing market just because they're unsure about their jobs, their dual income, their kids' schooling and violence and all the crap we talk about. The social injustice is what came to mind. All the social repercussions going on around the world, but it's just we're coming up on a period, the fourth quarter of this year, where the Fed's guessing at what's going to happen with inflation. They're guessing that another 3/4 points of interest rate rise is going to curb inflation. You get gas prices down, so now everybody says that's over. Inflation's peaked, and you go from one week to the next week with an extreme of it's the sky's falling, Chicken Little, to plant more beans and get the beanstalk growing through the clouds again. But all in all, if you just kind of do the numbers, at some point those extra 300,000 homes that are getting built over the completion are going to come to the market, and we're not going to need to be building 1.3 million or 1.6 million. We're only going to need to be building about 1 million housing starts to end up with 1.3 or 1.3 million completions. So to me, just the simple logic is housing starts are going to have to fall pretty substantially from 1.6 to about 1 million just so we can get caught up on completions. And that's, you talk about what's that, a 30% decrease in housing starts. You go from 1.6 to 1 million, and all of a sudden an industry that can supply 1.3 million homes is oversupplied in every aspect of what it does. Concrete, pipes, doors, windows, roofing, lumber, faucets, sinks, refrigerators, everything. Everything can be oversupplied.
I told you I have a couple friends in the home building industry. One of them called me 2 weeks ago and said they had extra I-joists to sell. I'm like, why did you have them? And they said, well, we built an inventory up around the country in case we needed them during this lack of them over the last 6 months, right? Another one was telling me that, all of a sudden they're obviously their inventory is growing. Inventory of unsold new homes, and that just makes sense, right? When you look at new mortgages and the rate. Now we're chipping away at the ability to build more. And the other thing you and I actually talked about, I think when we chatted a couple nights ago, the offsite and trust building industry had solid visibility to the end of the year. And all of a sudden, one of the people that I really hang my hat on and listen to all the time that has good information said, hey, that visibility we thought that you had at the end of the year, people are coming back to us now and saying we may not have that same visibility to the end of the year. Surprise, right?
Yeah, and I was talking to a guy earlier this week that said that trust business in his area, I think it was Detroit, was very, very strong, and people were booked out like 3 or 4 months. And I said, well, just hang on because they're getting ready not to be. Everybody else thought the same thing. I saw real estate sheets talking about the highest, most overpriced housing markets in the country. Boise, Idaho was first. And my city here in Charlotte, North Carolina, is the second most overvalued. It says it's like overvalued by 65%.
Good, Matt. Good point, because you actually were kind of on top of this 4 months ago. So I read something similar to that, where any place where people have second homes or vacation homes are some overpriced areas, which are seeing some significant pullback, so to speak, right, in price. And my buddy's a mortgage broker, and he was telling me the premium that they're putting on second homes now for a mortgage is like 1.5 to 2 points. I didn't even know that was a thing, right? But if you go and you tell a mortgage broker you want to buy a second home now, and it's not your primary, they actually put a premium on that. That's what I've been told, right? So Boise's and your Dallas, Texas, and your Austins, of course, they're going to have some, they're the high beta areas, but then you have areas like, this is when everybody says housing is regional, and we see this from our followers sometimes when they comment how my area is great, right? So if you're in Minneapolis, Minnesota right now, you still have a lack of housing and people are looking for a bunch of it, right? And if you're sitting in Dallas, Texas right now, I'm guessing there's some built up inventory there. That could all change, but that's what we're kind of seeing, the high beta areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you think about this too, we've spent the last 18 months or 2 years of people fleeing metropolitan areas, trying to get in suburban areas, and that's going to stick. You know, the average length of a mortgage is like 7 years. So
Yeah.
you know, we're going under the assumption that things are going to always be the same. That in 7 years people are going to flip this house and go get another one, and that's why we need all these new homes. People keep moving up, but it looks to me like when you look at the houses, the price range of houses that have been sold this year, the most are like 5 bedrooms, 4 baths kind of homes that have office space in it. People are buying homes they intend to stay in. They don't intend to flip because they know they're not going to have to leave and change jobs. They can work from home, and then more of that's going to be settling in. So I think we're going to see a slower rotation of people moving out of homes and mover uppers, and people just staying in the stay at home, fixing up their backyards, and plunking down an extra $200,000 on the front end just to know they're not going to flip it in 7 years and stay in for a while.
There was just an article out yesterday. I'll post it after this if I can find it. And it was a chart of all of the major metropolitan cities in the U.S. and their suburban counterpart areas and how far you get out in the suburbs, and the price increase of the city and the price increase of the suburban houses meant most of them prices were flat to only up 10% in the city. And I know there's exceptions. And in the suburbs, they were upwards of 40% in the suburbs. And that basically tells you that that people are doing, for my whole life, from being 24 to I won't say exactly how old I am now, I saw the actual reverse commute. Everybody was selling their places in the suburbs and then going to the city, right? And the exact opposite is happening. There is a major exodus from cities now.
And as long as there's a fear of COVID or some kind of infection, people don't want to be around each other and breathe on each other. That's going to mean trouble for city dwellers. People are going to want to go back, but it's not going to get crammed like it was before. I think where everybody wanted to get in the high-rise buildings so they could go around the corner and get a beer and a quesadilla every night and eat out and stay out and hang out in the streets. But it's just a changing, a lot of fundamental changes. But I think the mistake that the housing industry is making is thinking that the things that made the market get like it is are going to stay. And there's a couple of things that we just mentioned that aren't going to stay, and that's going to be the length of time people stay in a home, the desire to move back from suburbs into the city, and the investment that people are making in the upfront investment people are making in a suburban home to raise a family, have their kids go to the same school and not have to move them around all over the place. And it's just, I just think our demand for housing is going to decline, or new homes is going to decline, I think, significantly in 2023.
Well, the environment's changing too, Matt. So, and I know in my little town and other little towns I go around, there are now restaurants that are moving from the city up to the suburbs, and they're putting a city-like atmosphere. Does that even sound? You go to a restaurant now in downtown Winnetka or in Wilmette or Glencoe, it's just like you're at a city restaurant. Everybody makes the comment now. So what they're doing is they're building up the areas around me to reflect the same type of entertainment and situations that people had in the city without the carjacking experience.
Yeah, right. You don't have to get mugged. Just eliminate some of the muggings.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of cool. So I think that's going to continue, and that'll keep going. So let's talk a little bit about the different species. So lumber's a little confused right now. Futures are up almost $140 in a week and a half, right? We got the new contract kicking in. Futures were about $100 discount to the quote unquote price. So it made sense for futures to move up. Cash is what I'm getting feedback from distributors and wholesalers, they're getting better prices at where they're sitting at, but they're still not going out crazy buying. Eastern spruce was high priced. There was some trading done on that relative in the last 2 or 3 weeks as these mills came back from their summer shutdowns. What's happening is not surprising. I know Greg Riley was telling me 2 weeks ago, he goes, expect to see futures to go up above 600 with cash doing nothing. And I called him today to tell him he made a good call and hopefully he made some money on it.
Yeah, there's in the way the futures is traded too. There's all kinds of gaps above and gaps below. Futures has got some ratcheting to do between 650 and 450 back.
So hey, somebody on LinkedIn sent me a question about your about the numbers last week, and I was going to call you and ask you about it. I didn't. So you may have a good answer. First of all, they asked where's the disparity between why is Eastern lumber so higher than Western lumber? I don't know if they were looking at, so when you price Eastern lumber, everybody has to remember, a lot of times you're pricing it off like a Great Lake or a Boston base where a lot of the quote unquote freight is baked in. When you're quoting a Western price, so for instance, when Matt, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you quote an Eastern price, it's like a Great Lakes price. So if you want to go to Chicago with that, it's about even money or maybe a little bit higher. When you're quoting Western spruce, everybody remember that's quoted in BC. You've got freight to Chicago, which is probably somewhere around $80 to $90 a thousand now. So that's the disparity in price there. But the other thing they were asking about, and I didn't look at them in a while, why is there such a disparity between Eastern pine and Western pine? It was almost $100 on 4-inch last week.
Well, I know who asked you the question because he asked me the same question this morning.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Good. I want to make sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's and I told him, and no offense to anybody listening, but it's buyer ignorance.
Okay.
It's just not being aware of cross market opportunities. There's no reason why you can't buy from Alabama and Mississippi, which is considered kind of the central zone, which is pretty close to the Western prices, and ship it back east. But it's good marketing on behalf of the mills and just poor buying skills. It's just not being aware of what's going on.
Maybe that's one of them too. If you have a buyer's representative at a mill that has mills in the east and the west, and you just buy a load of something, there's a good chance they're going to ship it from the lowest common denominator to you, if they can. Yeah.
You're looking for a delivered price. You end up saying, well, gosh, I think it came all the way from Arkansas to South Carolina. You go, well, yeah, we got $125 difference in the FOB mill price, and you're willing to pay me the east side price. So
what Matt is saying there is that really shows buyers' awareness and why your report is so important. If you are calling a mill rep at one of these 4 big mills that they just sell you lumber based on your west or your eastern southern yellow pine, or you're buying cash there, what Matt is saying is, hey, go find a mill that actually is selling directly out of the west, some of these small or big independent ones, or just call and say, hey, look, can I get a price out of your Western mill? Oh, hey, you're quoting me $100 over print. Why are you doing that? Right?
Yeah, and some of it's just it's habitual laziness. It's like we still have a mentality in our industry of doing it like granddaddy used to do it. Now for a lot of people, it's the way great granddaddy used to do it. And you have a couple of brokers that you would call, and your buying circle is everybody's 75 years old doing the same thing they always done. But
you're not talking today, are you? Because the same thing's going on today, or is this?
I'm talking. It's the same thing it's been for 40 years.
Yeah.
It just hasn't changed. People, there's a problem that buyers have, and it's a fearfulness of and an apprehension of making the wrong decision, and buyers still like to want to be convinced that they're making the right decision, and that's why brokers are so successful, because they they get together every morning and every lunchtime every day, and they say like, all right, what's going on in the market? What do I need to say today to get that buyer to buy something from me today? It's today's business. It's not what's happening tomorrow, what's happening 3 weeks or 4 weeks from now. It's today and the next half a day period of time. What do I have to say to get an order? And a good example of that is West Fraser announced that we're going to have curtailments in the fourth quarter, implying they were going to be permanent laying off a shift. Now, we all know that laying off a shift it never needs to be permanent. Permanent means closing a sawmill. But the market just it lost its panties over the whole thing and went crazy. For futures been up like 50, $75 in the last couple of days. Cash prices got tighter, and West Fraser actually lowered their price by $30.
Yeah.
So,
look, like I told Fortune the other day, I'm like, look, it's a fool's errand trying to figure out when and why mills take production off and add it on. And you reminded me the other day, when mills do actually curtail stuff, it's more bearish than it is bullish, right?
Yeah, it's because they can't sell it. That's the only reason they're curtailing it. It's not because they can't make any money on it. It's just they got nowhere to put it.
Yeah. It's, all right. So I got a good question for you. I know a couple people I talked to, Riley was saying 3 months ago, we're going to end the year at the same housing starts potentially as 2021, which was a big call back then. Where do you think we'll end the year in housing starts, and what do you think we'll do in 2023 for housing starts?
I think we'll do 1,200,000 or 1,000,000. I think 1,200,000 or 1,300,000 tops in 23. I think there's a potential that we could do as low as 1,000,000. Just because we're going to get caught up. I think we're going to have a really slow period of time. Probably with the splurge that's going on right now to get starts in the ground, I think it's going to radically shut off, regardless of what interest rates do, just because of the uncertainty of the economy and the world and political events that are going on. And I think the economy is just going to cool, and we're going to have a spell where builders are going to wait and not, do anything preemptive in the first quarter or the fourth quarter this year. In the next 6 months, I think it'd be very confusing, and I hate to use the word catastrophic, because if you really think about it, we're just getting back in line. That this 1.6 million starts is what's out of line. That's where we're overdone in housing, because we can't complete them. So we're just slabbing and throwing lumber up there, and now we got all this new production in lumber and other products around the world to try to keep up with this apparent supply shortage, and we don't need it. There's not. You say there's a housing supply shortage of taking 1 million. I heard a guy told me the other day 10 million. I said, where in the world did you get 10 million? I mean, there's not 10 million families in America. So said, I haven't seen anybody sitting under a bridge with a bank account and behind a big desk waiting because he's looking for a place to move into. Everybody's living somewhere.
Yeah, and for 30 years being in the business, somebody with a big brain and an abacus has been telling me that we're underbuilt. And they've been saying that when we went to 2 million starts in 2003, 4, and then down to 600,000 starts. And I think somewhere around 1.4 to 1.5 is probably what we want to build over a long period of time. But that's also why we always try to overshoot and do all that. And as companies consolidate and get bigger, we'll figure it all. I'm sure we'll figure it all out. Yes, there's some more big buyers in the market that buy rental homes and do that kind of stuff. But I think that will actually help keep some kind of bottom under the market for especially the entry level homes, if there is such a thing anymore.
Yeah, how old were you in the 70s?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I was born in 68. So
yeah. So do you remember bell bottom jeans and Nehru shirts and double knit suits?
I was on the back end of that.
Yeah, you were on the low end. That's what everybody had these. There were these trend things that you think like everybody's got to dress like the Beatles and dress like the 60s hippies, and this buy to rent, build to rent is a trend. It's a fad that's going to pass, because I mean people aren't going to spend the rest of their lives in an apartment. and it's gonna pass, and I think it's just too much happening too fast. It's almost like every lumber market rally that you see that goes from, well, I mean, just for an example, we went from 400 to 1700 to 400 to 1600 to 400 and back to 1200, and there's no reason to think that this big flash in the pan build to rent or buy to rent is something that's a long-term trend. I mean, it defies the behavior of humans and their housing desires, and you're not going to want to live on a third floor of an apartment for all their life.
The only thing I can see about the buy to rent is large companies like is it Innovation Homes, or these ones that buy all these
Invitation
homes and all of them. You know, in my opinion, what they're doing is they're going out and taking advantage of inefficiencies in a market that hasn't consolidated yet, right? They're taking pension money, money that used to be in the market, and they're saying, hey, look, there's an opportunity. The reason they're doing it is they can make money, right? And they're controlling an asset, right? And they have a different reason for controlling that asset that Matt or Ashley or somebody else may have. And for some reason, it's working for them, and they're buying, right? So we'll see if that continues. So it's interesting watching them, because it's creating all kinds of other industries of companies that now have to go maintain those houses for people, right? And then it creates another industry where maybe I'm thinking way down the stream here, maybe these companies will put in washing machines and dishwashers and TVs where you basically have to flip on a UPC code or something. Every time you use anything in the house or anything extra, you get charged for it.
Yeah, you got a couple of comments you might want to address over there.
Kenneth Gustafson, I think Ken's from Houston. I think I've talked to him before. The amount of PE capital allocated to the housing and build to rent is not going away, and it seems to be that.
Yeah, that doesn't change the fact that just because there's more money there doesn't mean there's more demand there.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's see, Kyle put the market trend of 1.6 plus housing starts began in January 20 and February 20, ultimately to fall at the beginning of COVID, only to go immediately back to that trend. Can't argue that we are going to have a pullback. However, market dynamics are much different. 8 to 9, tremendous amount of high quality creditors and capital sitting on the sidelines, ready to pounce at a pullback and perceived deal. That's a good opinion. I like that opinion, Kyle. A catastrophic change only happens if inflation continues much higher and out of control of monetary policy. Any thoughts there, Matt?
Yep.
So it seems to me from all the comments, I mean, markets always do what hurts the most amount of people the most. It seems like everybody's still very bullish on housing.
Yeah. For old reasons.
I understand why. I'm just saying is I maybe this industry is maturing a little bit more now. You know, who knows?
Well, yeah, you'd like to say that. I'd like to say that 20 years ago. I think the thing that we got to factor into everything, like what Kyle's and Ken's comments, where they make perfectly logical sense based on what we've been doing for the last couple of years. But we've also seen the last couple of years what happens when you get a disruption that you didn't count on, and a disruption like having consumer confidence get so low that people just say, like, I'm just not going to buy a new house. And if you think about it, a new house isn't to create housing for people that don't have a home. It's a luxury to trade up from what you're already in. People aren't living under bridges with nothing to, nowhere to go.
Yeah, I kind of look at the utility, right? And from being an agricultural business major and being involved in the farming side for a long time, I see all of this big PE money coming into farmland, right? Because farmland has utility for them. They own an asset, it produces every year, and it kicks off cash, right? And I've seen farmland go from $2,300 an acre in Iowa 10, 12 years ago to now 20,000 in some cases, right? And now you hear about on the news all of this big money coming in, right? But that's been happening for a long time. So I still keep an eye on these PE companies coming in and buying. What happens if someday they are the only buyers of houses and we all end up being renters? I don't think that's going to happen, but I just see them dumping enough cash in because maybe it's better for them than stocks or cryptocurrency or anything. They need to chase yield somewhere, right? At the end of the day,
when you got rents and home values going up 20 to 40% a year, that's a no-brainer. But what happens when that investment? They've got plenty of money in the bank on stuff they bought a couple of years ago, but things that people that are buying subdivisions from D.R. Horton right now in lots of 250 homes at a time at these prices, I think regardless of how much money you've got, it's at some point it doesn't pencil out. You got problems. You start decide, well, maybe this thing's over. Let's bring this thing to the market and try to start selling them. I mean, was it Zillow who put like 7,000 homes on the market earlier in the year? They had a little difficult time trying to get out of those things. And some of these in large investment firms, VC firms, or just investment firms, they got millions and millions and billions of dollars tied up into rental homes, that under the assumption that rents are going to stay the same and people are going to be able to afford to pay $2,500 for an apartment or for a home that they could have gotten for $1,700 a year ago. That's a big assumption.
Yeah, I always scratch my head when you go by that same house and you see two new Range Rovers sitting in the driveway that they're also paying $1,200 a month on a payment that they can't afford those too, right?
Yeah, they just got back from Cozumel and spent $30,000.
Yeah, so I mean, we're a nation where we like to have nice things, even if we can't afford to buy them sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's
the thing about it's going to, on the positive side for housing, is like we're not going to do without. We're a nation, probably a world of people that, especially developed first world nations, are we're used to getting a little bit better and a little bit maybe not more, but just a little better quality and a little more fun more often, eating out a little more often, just indulging ourselves. So the money we get, the extra money we get, we earn, and when we spend it. And I don't see that that's going to change. I don't see that we're going to become hoarders of cash and trying to stay status quo. So yeah. Everything I'm talking about, I know a lot of it sounds negative, but I think it's short term. It's just a cycle that we're going to go through because we've gotten so wound up so tight going up. We're going to just squeeze some of the extra, like taking a towel and squeezing all the extra rinse water out of it. And then I think we're going to resume our normalcy back at 1.45. But I think starts what I'm talking about. But I think we've got a shock that's going to kind of take everybody by surprise, and we're going to find the lumber market's going to go through a period of being grossly oversupplied, and the entire housing sector is going to be oversupplied for everything it needs for probably a period of 6 to 9 months, and then we'll kind of work our way back.
Yeah, Ken just put up there, to your point, people need to live somewhere. Entry level will be renters, as they are priced out of purchases by price or higher mortgage rates. Institutional buyers will have an edge on financing. Recognize the duration mismatch. Not saying this is good. A whole bunch of people will be priced out of building essential equity. This is a social contract issue and will become political. That's a good point. And some of these big builders, Matt, actually have their own mortgage side, right? So yeah. One of the things that they can do is buy points down for people, or have people buy points down, right? And you can do that. But as things get larger, as we know with anything in life, the dynamics change, and building isn't. We're not seeing our parents' builders anymore. These are big builders now. They're consolidating, getting bigger every freaking day, right?
And if you think about from interest rates is an interesting subject, because it's like everything's all of a sudden too expensive because interest rates are 5%, but interest rates are only expensive at 5% because we're coming from 2. If we're coming for 12, everybody be on them like white on rice. So yeah. It's all a matter of mortgage rates go up to 7%, come back to 5%, everybody's going to love 5%. But on the way up from 2%, nobody likes it. But they'll find a way to make 5% work once it's bounced around it a little bit, and there's nothing wrong. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think interest rates are a deterrent, especially with for the big financial or investment money that's coming into institutional money that's coming in. They like these low interest rates of 2%, 5% might not work out so well, but it's going to be interesting to see if that can continue.
Yeah, no doubt. One thing I wanted to talking to a couple of, it seems to be the distribution, the wholesale community got a little bit long the last 3 or 4 weeks, or started to get a little bit long. I can tell from the conversations I have with buyers and sellers, and which is actually reaping a pretty good reward right now. If you sell, the interesting thing, if you sell something to somebody now, they're calling you the next day asking where the truck is, right? So there's still some good flow and good. And Kyle may be able to answer this a lot better because he sits in the middle of a lot of that. I'm sure there's still some good liquidity right now, and I think that's for the time being, because people are a little bit scared of building any inventory. These big consolidated companies that keep building, they're coming out and asking for longer terms, and they're building less and less inventory. So it's all about cash flow to them, right? And they don't want to have, they've probably worked through their $1,000 inventory now, or $1,500 inventory. And I think like you said, you take that towel, we've squeezed that excess. So for the most part, that big premium between the wholesale mill side and the retail side, where that actually comes, is getting about as close right now, at least where we're at right now, whereas I think we're going to get that two-month lag that we usually have for prices adjusting. Does that sound like right from what you're hearing, Matt?
Yeah, I think everybody that I had a couple of group calls over the last 2 weeks, and everybody said the same thing, that they think lumber prices are going lower in August, and they intend to buy big the end of August. And I want to say, you realize what you're doing. You're talking your position. You're saying you're short, and you think the market's going to go down because you need the market to go down, but you need to buy.
Yeah. So and from the other thing I'm hearing is all the multifamily jobbers, the office wholesalers that sit and then resell everything from drywall and fixtures to lumber to builders of multifamily. They're back in their groove from 2 or 3 years ago, where they're taking orders and holding them short, right? And so there's a lot of interesting pent-up business that's sitting there right now. So we'll see. Kyle put lumber inventory seems ultra conservative from our read in the marketplace right now. David Stelkup said unsold housing inventory in Spokane, Washington, March 2022, 384. I'm guessing units. That's Dave. And July 2022, 427 makes it. And David said, I'm sure this is common across the country, right?
Yeah, you may find prices still hanging on, but there's certainly a lot more new inventory on the market. Right,
for sure. Anything else that you wanted to talk about today, Matt?
I think that's a good spread to peanut butter across it all.
You are going to get a hard time for saying 1.2 in 2023, man. But I mean, you wouldn't want.
I will until December of 2023.
You wouldn't want it any other way, would you?
No.
That's awesome. I mean, that was great feedback today. So look, if you want to tell me a little bit more, are you getting more people signing up for your for the pricing that you're?
Yeah, the scouting report now is we're up to about 900 recipients, which is pretty good for just being out there for about a month. It's and one of the things that I did this week is, if you notice, the content of the on the scouting report isn't just like, here's what 2x4s did last week, and here's what Southern Pine has done, and here's what Spruce has done. I'm trying to do things to get people to start thinking forward for themselves without exactly giving a forecast, but just to start thinking about other things like we talked about here, that just in this conversation today. But still, it's with that, just to everybody everybody's got a source. You can find out what the price of lumber is. Everybody that's on this phone call, on this Zoom call right now, knows what the price of the products of lumber is. You don't need to be me or anybody else to regurgitate it back to you and tell you what it was already. So we're trying to take a position of getting people to think beyond yesterday's prices and last week's prices and things that have already happened, to start thinking more into the future a little bit.
And Matt, one thing I noticed a bunch of people on this call today that are not traditional buyers or sellers of lumber directly, but are directly involved in it through PE and through other investing type of situations. If you aren't getting Matt's report, not just a scouting report, but the layman guide, you're really missing out, and you should sign up for that because, Matt talks about numbers, but he really talks about the grassroots reasons where the rubber meets the road of why things are actually happening. And actually puts himself out there and says what he thinks is going to happen because of his experience in the market. And I think it's for people that are, if you're in the industry, it's a must to have. If you're outside of the industry and you from owning a home to just talking to people about buying homes, I think it's a must too. Matt, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's funny. I had this lady that was, she was calling about 2 years, and it was a Chicago number, and she was asking me about, I don't know if she got my number, but maybe off the website or something. But
yeah,
she said she was going to build a lady she was an Indian lady. She was going to build a apartment complex. So apparently she just had, $10 million she wanted to blow on something. She was asking like, when's a good time to buy? And I just I didn't take it very seriously, but then she called me. I was telling her when a good time to buy it would be and all that kind of things. She got down to making phone calls about every 3 months. She said, "Is it time yet? What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And I just had a kind of casual conversation. But she ended up starting her apartment complex instead of 18 months ago. She started this summer, and the difference in what she was going to pay turned out to be about $7 million, and just the cost of her framing lumber and that whole complex. And I thought it was just a little bitty deal, but there's so much to get to the point you said that you're talking about. There's so much information in the things that we do that can help you if you're just a developer or an investor. It's lumber.
So you're saying you actually helped her save that kind of dough.
Yeah, that was just in casual conversation. I wasn't even really trying hard.
Yeah.
I haven't seen my share of the check yet, but she was pretty happy about it.
It's crazy. I get calls all the time after these conversations, and I have her. Next thing I know, I've spent 2 hours on the phone helping somebody figure out how to buy, right? And then you try to set up a consulting deal with them, and they don't want to pay you.
Well, we're getting to it. This is like an ongoing thing all the time. There's always new people coming into the market, and like Kyle's business, for example, at Sherwood, they've got a lot of stages of traders, probably new and from 25 years old to 60 years old, that can teach each other how to do things, and by the process of eliminating and the process of watching and learning. But some people don't have that luxury, so we have educational courses as well to help people.
Yeah,
help people learn how to buy lumber, and start out with how do you say 2x4.
Yeah, well, like I said, for instance, I had a person that was on this call asking us questions a few months ago, and they called me probably 10 times, and I actually went to the point of showing them how to do stuff and buying, and they were going through 3 or 4 different steps, but they were buying $40-50 million worth of lumber, right? But didn't have any idea. So finally, I'm like, look, I'll consult with you for this much, and then they went radio silent, right?
Yeah, you mean it was not free forever?
No, that was, yeah, exactly. So, all right, well, cool, Matt. Everybody should sign up for Layman's Guide, and we'll look forward to doing this again next week, Matt.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for the input.
Yeah, thank Kyle, everybody. Dave.
And David, thanks, guys.
Appreciate all your input.
Have a good day.